Elena didn't know that the man conducting palace interviews was the most powerful alpha in existence. She didn't know that he'd been searching for his mate for over a century, and she certainly didn't know that the moment she walked through those gilded doors, he would throw out every other application without a second glance. All she knew was that she needed this job, desperately. The line stretched impossibly long ahead of her, dozens of young women in their finest dresses, chattering excitedly about their chances of working in the royal palace. Elena tugged at her borrowed brown dress, the only decent thing she owned, and tried to ignore the growling in her empty stomach. She'd spent her last coins on soap to wash her hair properly. If she didn't get this position, she couldn't think about that. Wouldn't. "I heard he's devastatingly handsome," whispered the girl in front of her, a blonde in silk who clearly had no business applying for a maid's position. "My cousin works in the kitchens. She says he's got these eyes that see right through you. Father says if I can catch his attention as a servant, perhaps he'll notice me properly." Another giggled. "Imagine becoming queen instead of just a maid." Eleanor's chest tightened. These weren't desperate women seeking honest work. They were noble daughters playing at being servants, hoping to seduce their way into the king's bed. She was the only one here who actually needed to scrub floors and empty chamber pots to survive. The massive doors ahead gleamed with gold inlay depicting running wolves beneath a full moon. Everything about this place screamed wealth and power, from the marble floors polished to mirror brightness to the crystal chandeliers casting rainbow light across the walls. Elena had never seen such opulence. She didn't belong here, but she had nowhere else to go. "Next!" The voice came from within the chamber, deep and commanding. The blonde in silk practically floated through the doors. Eleanor counted her breaths, trying to calm her racing heart. 30 seconds later, the girl stumbled out looking dazed and disappointed. "Dismissed," she mumbled to the waiting line. "He barely looked at me." One by one, the applicants were called and dismissed with increasing speed. Beautiful women, accomplished women, women with connections and references. None lasted more than a minute inside that room. Finally, impossibly, Elena stood alone before those golden doors. "Next!" She stepped inside and immediately forgot how to breathe. The man seated behind the enormous oak desk wasn't just handsome, he was devastating. Dark hair swept back from sharp features, broad shoulders filling out a black shirt that probably cost more than Elena had ever owned. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold. Amber shot through with gold like molten metal, and they were fixed on her with an intensity that made something deep in her chest pull tight. He went utterly still when she entered, his powerful frame freezing like a predator scenting prey. "Name," he said, but his voice had changed from the commanding tone she'd heard through the doors. Rougher now, softer. "Elena Moreau, Your Majesty." She managed a clumsy curtsy, her knees nearly buckling under the weight of his stare. "Elena." He spoke her name like he was tasting it, rolling it around his tongue to savour the flavour. Something warm unfurled in her stomach at the sound. "You're here for the maid position." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. "Yes, Your Majesty. I can clean, cook, mend clothing." "Where are you from?" The question threw her. "The outer districts, Your Majesty, near the border." "Family?" Her throat tightened. "None, Your Majesty. I'm alone." Something dangerous flashed in those golden eyes. "Show me your hands." Elena blinked, confused, but extended her hands palm up. They were rough, calloused from years of hard work, with a thin scar across her left palm from a broken dish she'd tried to catch while working in the tavern. He leaned forward, studying her hands without touching, and the air between them seemed to crackle with electricity. Heat radiated from him in waves, making her skin prickle with awareness she didn't understand. "You've worked hard," he observed quietly. "Yes, Your Majesty." "How long since you've eaten a proper meal?" The unexpected question made her flush with shame. I don't require much." "How long, Elena?" The way he said her name again made her chest flutter. 3 days, Your Majesty." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. When he spoke again, his voice carried absolute authority. "You're not suited for the kitchens." Eleanor's heart plummeted. Of course, she wasn't pretty enough, polished enough, noble enough for this place. "I understand, Your Majesty. Thank you for your time. You'll serve as my personal attendant instead." The words hit her like a physical blow. Elena stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "Your Majesty, I'm not qualified to—" "You'll have quarters in the East Wing, meals provided. Your duties will include managing my schedule, organising my private study, and being available when I require assistance." He stood, unfolding to his full imposing height, and Eleanor had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "The position pays 3 times what kitchen staff receive." "But Your Majesty, surely someone with proper training—" "Do you accept?" His golden gaze held hers captive, and Elena felt something impossible stirring in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fireplace crackling in the corner, a pull toward this stranger who should terrify her but somehow didn't. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Powerful men were dangerous. Powerful men who offered orphan girls extraordinary opportunities always wanted something in return. But 3 times kitchen wages would mean security, safety, a roof over her head, and food in her belly. And something about the way he looked at her, like she was precious instead of disposable, made her throat tight with emotions she couldn't name. "I accept, Your Majesty." "Good." The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been a smile. And Elena— "Yes, Your Majesty? You're not going anywhere." The words should have sounded threatening. Instead, they felt like a promise. Elena woke in a bed softer than clouds. For a moment she lay perfectly still, convinced she was dreaming. The sheets beneath her were silk, not the rough cotton she was used to. Sunlight streamed through windows that actually had glass, real glass, not oiled paper or wooden shutters. The walls around her were painted a soft cream colour and decorated with actual artwork instead of water stains and cracks. This couldn't be real. She sat up slowly, taking in the servant quarters that were larger and more luxurious than any room she'd ever inhabited. A wardrobe stood against one wall, and when she opened it with trembling fingers, she found 3 dresses hanging inside. Simple designs, but made of quality fabric in deep blue and forest green. A note was pinned to one. For Eleanor. A K.A.K., the Alpha King. Her stomach fluttered at the memory of those golden eyes, the way her name had sounded in his deep voice. She pressed her fingers to her chest, where that strange warmth had bloomed yesterday, but found only her own rapid heartbeat. What had she gotten herself into? A soft knock at her door made her jump. "Miss Eleanor, His Majesty requests your presence for breakfast." Eleanor's blood went cold. Breakfast with the king. She wasn't prepared for this, didn't know the proper protocols, didn't even know how to address him during a meal. "Miss Eleanor!" "Coming," she called, her voice barely steady. She chose the blue dress, fingers shaking as she laced it up. It fit perfectly, which should have been impossible since no one had measured her. The fabric was soft against her skin, finer than anything she'd ever worn. The servant led her through corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly, past tapestries and sculptures that probably cost more than entire villages. Elena tried to memorize the route, but everything looked the same, marble and gold and impossible beauty. They stopped before carved double doors. "His Majesty is inside, miss. Just knock." Elena stared at the door for a full minute before gathering enough courage to tap gently on the wood. "Enter." She pushed open the door and stepped into what looked like a private dining room, smaller than she'd expected, with a round table set for 2 and morning light streaming through tall windows. But it was the man rising from his chair that made her breath catch. He looked different in the daylight, still devastatingly handsome, still radiating that dangerous power, but somehow more approachable. His dark hair was slightly mussed as if he'd run his hands through it, and he'd traded yesterday's formal attire for a simple white shirt and dark trousers. "Elena." He said her name like a prayer. Did you sleep well? Yes, Your Majesty, thank you. She remained by the door, unsure whether she was supposed to serve him or something else entirely. Sit. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please. Your Majesty, I should be serving you, not... Sit, Elena. The command was gentle but unmistakable. Elena perched on the edge of the chair, back straight, hands folded in her lap like she was ready to bolt at any second. He watched her with those piercing golden eyes, and she had the strangest sensation that he could see right through her skin to the fear and confusion swirling beneath. When he reached for a pitcher to pour her tea, their fingers brushed accidentally. Lightning shot up her arm. Elena gasped and jerked her hand back, nearly knocking over her cup. The king went completely still, his own breathing seeming to stop entirely. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to." "It's all right." His voice was rougher now, like he was fighting for control. "Tell me about yourself, Elena." "There's nothing to tell, Your Majesty." "Everyone has a story." He began filling her plate with food. Eggs, fresh bread, fruit that looked like it had been picked that morning. More food than she usually saw in a week. "Where did you learn to read?" Elena blinked, surprised. "How did you know I could read?" "The way you looked at the books in my study yesterday. Most servants won't make eye contact with written words." He settled back in his chair, giving her space but never taking his eyes off her. "Someone taught you." "My mother." The words slipped out before Elena could stop them. "Before she died, she said knowledge was the only thing no one could steal from you." Something shifted in his expression, gentler somehow. "She sounds like a wise woman." She was. Elena stared down at her plate, overwhelmed by the smell of real food. "She and my father died when I was 14, border skirmish with the northern packs." "I remember that conflict." His voice went deadly quiet. "I'm sorry for your loss." Elena risked a glance at him. "You remember it?" "Every life lost in my territory matters to me." He leaned forward slightly. "What happened to you after?" The question opened old wounds Eleanor had thought were healed. "I worked where I could. Taverns, farms, anywhere that would take an orphan girl with no family name." She forced herself to take a small bite of bread. It was impossibly soft, with butter that melted on her tongue. "It wasn't easy." "And yet you survived." There was something like admiration in his voice. "You're stronger than you know." Eleanor almost choked on her tea. "Your Majesty, I'm not strong. I'm nobody. Yesterday was the first time in my life anyone has offered me kindness without expecting something in return." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Someone hurt you." It wasn't a question. Elena's chest tightened with old fear, old shame. "It doesn't matter now. It matters to me." The quiet fury in his voice made her look up sharply. His eyes had gone molten gold, and she could swear she saw something predatory lurking beneath the surface, something that would hunt down anyone who had dared to hurt her and tear them apart with bare hands. "Your Majesty!" "Adrian." The word came out roughly, like he was giving her something precious. "When we're alone, call me Adrian." Elena's heart stopped beating entirely. "I couldn't possibly—" "You can. You will." He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "I want to hear my name in your voice." The air between them crackled with something impossible, something that made her skin prickle and her pulse race. Elena stared at their almost touching hands and felt that golden warmth spreading through her chest again. "Adrian," she whispered, and watched his eyes go dark. "Perfect," he breathed. A sharp knock at the door shattered the moment. "Your Majesty! Urgent news from the border!" Adrian's expression shifted instantly from tender to commanding. "Enter." A guard stepped in, bowing deeply. "Lord Blackthorne requests an audience, Your Majesty. He says it concerns matters of pack succession." Elena watched Adrian's jaw tighten. Watch something dangerous flash in those golden eyes. Tell him I'll see him this afternoon. He's rather insistent, Your Majesty. Says it can't wait. It can wait. Adrian's voice carried absolute authority. And close the door behind you. The guard hesitated for just a moment before obeying, leaving them alone again. But the spell was broken. Elena could practically feel the weight of royal responsibility settling back onto Adrian's shoulders. I should go, she said quietly. Let you handle your duties. No? The word came out sharper than intended. Adrian softened his tone immediately. That is, there are things I need to show you about your position here. Of course, Your Majesty. Adrian, he corrected gently. Adrian. His name felt dangerous in her mouth, like a secret she wasn't supposed to know. He stood and moved around the table, offering his arm in a gesture that was far too formal for a servant. Come, let me show you where you'll be working. Elena stared at his extended arm, at the fine fabric of his shirt and the strength beneath it. Every instinct told her not to touch him again, not to risk that lightning sensation that made her feel things she didn't understand. But when she placed her hand on his arm, the warmth that spread through her felt less like danger and more like coming home. This way, Adrian murmured, and Elena let herself be led deeper into a world where orphan girls became personal attendants to kings, and impossible things felt suddenly, terrifyingly real. The days that followed were a whirlwind of confusion and wonder. Elena found herself existing in a space between servant and something else entirely, something she didn't dare name. Her duties were unlike anything she'd expected. Instead of scrubbing floors or emptying chamber pots, she spent her mornings organising Adrian's private study, her afternoons managing his correspondence, and her evenings. Her evenings were the most dangerous of all. You don't have to stand there like a statue, Adrian said, without looking up from the documents spread across his desk. There's a chair by the fire. Use it. Eleanor remained where she was, hands clasped behind her back in proper servant posture. I'm fine here, Your Majesty. Adrian. His voice carried that gentle correction she was growing far too fond of. And you've been standing for 2 hours. Sit. It was becoming a nightly ritual, him working late while she waited nearby in case he needed anything, him repeatedly telling her to make herself comfortable, her stubbornly maintaining professional distance. Except the distance was getting harder to maintain when he looked at her like that. Golden eyes warm with something that made her chest flutter. Elena. He set down his pen and turned to face her fully. Please. You're making me nervous standing there like you're about to flee. The admission startled her. I make you nervous? Terrified, he said with rueful honesty. Come here. Her feet moved before her mind could protest, carrying her across the room until she stood beside his chair. This close, she could smell his scent, something wild and clean like winter forest, and feel the heat radiating from his body. Better, he murmured, then gestured to the papers scattered across his desk. What do you think of these? Elena blinked down at the documents. Border patrol schedules, trade negotiations, population reports, the kinds of things that determine the fate of thousands. Your Majesty, I couldn't possibly... Adrian, and you can. You're intelligent, Elena. Your insights matter. She stared at him, searching for mockery or condescension, but found only genuine interest. Slowly she leaned forward to study the papers more closely. The Northern Border Patrol seems understaffed, given the recent tensions with Lord Blackthorn's territory. Adrian went very still. You know about Blackthorn? I hear things. Servants always do. Elena straightened, suddenly worried she'd overstepped. I shouldn't have presumed... You're absolutely right. Adrian's voice carried a mixture of admiration and something darker. He's been testing our defences for months, probing for weaknesses. Why? The question hung in the air between them. Adrian was quiet for so long, Elena thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. Because I killed his son. Elena's breath caught. Adrian! It was a fair challenge, ancient law. The boy was trying to claim territory that wasn't his, endangering innocence in the process. Adrian's hands clenched into fists on his desk. But Blackthorn has never forgiven me. He's been looking for an excuse to challenge my rule ever since. That was 5 years ago, Elena said quietly, and watched surprise flicker across his features. You know about that too? Border folk remember when nobles die. We're usually the ones who suffer the consequences. She hesitated, then took a step closer. You saved those villages. My village. The boy would have burned them to prove his strength. Something cracked in Adrian's carefully controlled expression. Your village? I was there when he came through with his hunting party, saw what he did to families who couldn't pay his tribute. Elena's voice went hard with old anger. You did what needed to be done. Adrian stared at her like she'd just offered him absolution for a sin he'd been carrying alone. Elena! A crash from somewhere in the palace cut off whatever he'd been about to say. Adrian was on his feet instantly, every line of his body screaming danger, and Elena felt an answering tension coil in her chest. Stay here, he commanded, already moving toward the door. What was that? I don't know. His voice carried the edge of an alpha preparing for battle. But you stay in this room until I come back. He was gone before Elena could protest, leaving her alone with racing heart and growing dread. She tried to follow his orders, tried to sit quietly and wait, but her nerves wouldn't let her rest. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the air itself, a wrongness that made her skin crawl. When the door opened 20 minutes later, she spun toward it with relief. Adrian! Thank the gods! But it wasn't Adrian who stepped through the door. It was a woman Eleanor had never seen before, tall, elegant, with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a dress that cost more than most people earned in a year. Her blue eyes swept over Elena with obvious disdain. So you're the little stray he's taken in. Elena straightened her spine, fighting the urge to curtsy. I'm Eleanor Moreau, His Majesty's personal attendant. The woman laughed, sharp and cutting. Personal attendant? How quaint. She moved into the room like she owned it, her gaze cataloguing every detail. I'm Lady Vivian Blackthorn. Perhaps you've heard the name? Elena's blood turned to ice. Blackthorn, the enemy Adrian had just been discussing. I see you have. Lady Vivian smiled, showing perfect white teeth. Good, then you understand why I'm here. Where is Adrian? Dealing with a small distraction my father arranged. Don't worry, he'll be back soon. That gives us time for a little chat. Lady Vivian settled gracefully into one of the chairs, arranging her skirts like she was posing for a portrait. About you. Eleanor remained standing, every instinct screaming danger. I don't know what you mean. Oh, I think you do. The king's sudden interest in a common servant girl. The way he looks at you. The way he's neglected his royal duties to play house. Lady Vivian's smile turned predatory. You think you're special, don't you? I think I'm exactly what I am. A servant. A servant who dines with the king. A servant who calls him by his given name. A servant who makes him forget his responsibilities. Lady Vivian stood, moving closer with predatory grace. Tell me, little mouse, do you know what you are to him? The question hit like a physical blow. Elena's chest tightened with the weight of suspicion she'd been trying to ignore. I'm his attendant. You're his mate. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Elena shook her head, backing away. No, that's not... He would have said... Would he? When you're so obviously terrified of your own shadow? When you flinch every time he gets too close? Lady Vivian laughed again, crueler now. He's trying to ease you into it, poor dear. Doesn't realise he's wasting his time on damaged goods. Stop! Elena's voice came out strangled. You feel it, don't you? The pull, the heat when he touches you, the way your heart races when he looks at you like you're something precious instead of disposable. Lady Vivian circled her like a predator stalking wounded prey. "But here's what he hasn't told you, little mouse. Here's what no one will tell you." Elena's back hit the wall, trapped. Mates of challenged alphas have the unfortunate tendency to die, horribly. It's the most effective way to break a rival's power, you see. Kill his mate, shatter his focus, claim his throne. Lady Vivian leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And my father has never lost a challenge." The room spun around Elena's head. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think beyond the terror clawing at her chest. He wouldn't. Adrian wouldn't let... Adrian is strong, but he's not invincible. And you? Lady Vivian's gaze raked over Elena with obvious contempt. "You're a liability, a weakness he can't afford." The door slammed open so hard it crashed against the wall. Adrian filled the doorway, and the fury radiating from him made the air itself feel dangerous. His eyes had gone wolf gold, and Elena could swear she saw fangs beneath his pulled-back lips. "Get away from her!" Lady Vivian straightened slowly, her expression shifting to innocent surprise. "Your Majesty, I was just introducing myself to your attendant." Adrian moved across the room faster than human speed, placing himself between Eleanor and the other woman. The protective gesture was unmistakable, and Eleanor's heart clenched at the confirmation of everything Lady Vivian had just told her. "Touch her again and I'll forget you're a woman," Adrian said quietly. "Now get out of my palace." "Of course, Your Majesty," Lady Vivian curtsied mockingly. "I'll be sure to tell my father how devoted you are to your staff." She glided from the room, leaving behind the suffocating scent of expensive perfume and barely veiled threats. Adrian stood frozen until her footsteps faded, then turned to Elena with eyes that had returned to human amber. "Elena, are you hurt? Did she touch you?" Elena stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time, the way he held himself, like he was ready to fight an army to protect her. The careful distance he maintained even now, like he was afraid of frightening her. The genuine concern in his voice. Her mate. The truth settled into her bones like ice, terrifying and undeniable. "Do you know what I am to you?" she whispered, echoing Lady Vivian's earlier question. Adrian went absolutely still. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Eleanor, tell me." Her hands were shaking. "Please, tell me the truth." He stared at her for a long moment, golden eyes full of longing and fear, and something that might have been love. "You're my mate," he said quietly, "the other half of my soul, the one I've been waiting for my entire life." Elena's knees gave out. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, gasping for breath that wouldn't come. Everything made sense now. The instant attraction, the impossible job offer, the way he treated her like she was precious. She wasn't special, she was just fated. "Eleanor." Adrian knelt in front of her, careful not to touch but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Breathe, please, just breathe." "I can't." The words came out broken. "I can't be what you need. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I don't know how to be a queen." "You're everything." Adrian's voice was fierce with conviction. "You're brave and kind and stronger than you know. You're perfect exactly as you are." "She said you'd die." Elena looked up at him through tears she hadn't realized were falling. "She said her father would kill me to break you." Something deadly flashed in Adrian's eyes. "I won't let that happen." "You can't promise that." "I can." He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movements, and cupped her face in his hands with infinite gentleness. "I'll protect you with my life, Elena. No one will hurt you, not while I breathe." The sincerity in his voice, the absolute conviction, made something crack open in Elena's chest. For just a moment she let herself lean into his touch, let herself feel safe in the circle of his arms. Then reality crashed back down. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't be responsible for your death." "Eleanor." She pushed his hands away and struggled to her feet, putting distance between them before she could lose her resolve. I should go, resign my position, leave the palace. No. Adrian rose as well, and the command in his voice was absolute. You're not running from this, from us! There is no us! The words tore from her throat. There's a king who needs to survive, and a servant who's going to get him killed. You're my mate. I'm your weakness. The silence that followed was deafening. Adrian stared at her like she'd driven a knife between his ribs, and Eleanor had to wrap her arms around herself to keep from reaching for him. Is that what you think? He asked quietly. That you make me weak? Don't you? Elena forced herself to meet his eyes. Would you have hesitated before accepting Blackthorn's challenge if I wasn't here? Would you have spent tonight worrying about protecting someone instead of planning your strategy? Adrian's jaw tightened. Eleanor, tell me I'm wrong. He couldn't. They both knew it. Eleanor nodded, her heart breaking with every beat. I should pack my things. No. Adrian stepped toward her, then stopped when she flinched. Please, don't go. I won't survive losing you. The raw vulnerability in his voice almost broke her resolve, but Lady Vivian's words echoed in her mind, sharp with terrible truth. A liability, a weakness he can't afford. You'll have to, Elena whispered, because I can't survive being the reason you die. She moved toward the door on unsteady legs, each step feeling like tearing away a piece of her soul. At the threshold, she paused without turning back. I'm sorry, Adrian, for all of it. Then she fled before her courage could fail her, leaving behind the only man who'd ever made her feel like she was worth something, and the impossible future she wasn't brave enough to claim. Elena made it exactly 3 steps toward her quarters before Adrian caught her. Elena, wait! His voice was rough with desperation. Please, we need to talk about this. She kept walking, couldn't bear to look at him. There's nothing to talk about. Everything to talk about. He matched her pace easily, his longer stride making her hurried steps seem almost frantic. You can't just run away because you're scared. I'm not scared. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. I'm being practical. Practical would be staying and letting me protect you. Eleanor whirled on him then, anger and fear warring in her chest. Protect me? Adrian, you can't even protect yourself. Lord Blackthorn has been planning this for years, and now he has the perfect weapon, me. You're not a weapon, you're a liability. The words echoed off the marble walls. Your mate who makes you weak, exactly like his daughter said. Adrian's eyes flashed with fury. Vivian is poison. Elena, every word from her mouth is designed to hurt you. That doesn't make them less true. They stared at each other across the corridor, the space between them feeling vast and unbridgeable. Elena's heart was breaking with every second, but she forced herself to stay strong. For him. For both of them. Your Majesty. A guard appeared at the far end of the hall, bowing deeply. Lord Blackthorn has arrived with his delegation. He requests an immediate audience. Elena's blood turned to ice. Adrian's expression shifted instantly from pleading to commanding. How many in his party? 50, Your Majesty, all armed. Of course they are. Adrian's voice carried deadly calm. Tell him I'll see him in the throne room in 1 hour. He says it cannot wait, Your Majesty. He's already proceeding there now. Adrian cursed under his breath. Fine. Summon the council and double the palace guard. His gaze flicked to Elena, and she saw the fear he was trying to hide. Escort Miss Moreau to the east wing. She's not to leave her quarters for any reason. No. Eleanor stepped forward before she could stop herself. I want to be there. Absolutely not. Adrian, if this is about me, I have a right. You have a right to be safe. His voice brooked no argument. And you will be, in your quarters, where Blackthorn can't use you against me. The guard cleared his throat uncomfortably. Your Majesty, Lord Blackthorn specifically requested that Miss Moreau be present. He says the challenge concerns her directly. Adrian went deadly still. Challenge? Eleanor's knees nearly buckled. challenge, as in trial by combat, as in fight to the death for the throne. Yes, your majesty, he's invoked the ancient laws. Son of a bitch! Adrian ran a hand through his hair, his carefully maintained control finally cracking. Elena, please, go to your room, lock the door, don't come out until this is over. No. Elena surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. If he's challenging you because of me, then I'm going to face this. Elena, I'm not running anymore, Adrian. I've been running my whole life and I'm tired. She straightened her shoulders, drawing on reserves of courage she didn't know she possessed. If I'm your mate, then I stand with you, no matter what. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Pride, fierce and warm, mixed with terror. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand perfectly. Eleanor reached for his hand, twining their fingers together. The contact sent that familiar warmth shooting up her arm, but this time she didn't pull away. I love you. The words hung in the air between them, stark and brave and absolutely true. Adrian's breath caught, his golden eyes going wide with wonder. Eleanor, I love you, she said again, stronger now, and I won't let you face this alone. Adrian's hand tightened on hers. If we do this, there's no going back. Once you're seen publicly as my mate, Blackthorn will know exactly how to hurt me. He already knows. Eleanor lifted their joined hands and pressed a kiss to his knuckles. So let's give him something to really worry about. The throne room had never looked more imposing. Eleanor had only glimpsed it once before, but now she stood at Adrian's side on the raised dais, acutely aware of every eye upon her. The space was massive, with soaring columns and stained glass windows that cast rainbow light across the marble floor. But it was the man standing in the centre of the room that commanded attention. Lord Blackthorn was exactly what Elena had expected, tall, silver-haired, with cold blue eyes and a smile that promised violence. He was flanked by a dozen armed men, all wearing the black and red of his house. Your Majesty, Blackthorn called out, his voice echoing in the vast space. How good of you to finally join us, and you brought the girl. Excellent. Adrian's hand found Elena's, squeezing gently before he stepped forward. Lord Blackthorn, you requested an audience. I did indeed. Blackthorn's gaze flicked dismissively over Elena before returning to Adrian. I've come to discuss the rather concerning rumours about your choice of companion. Miss Moreau is my personal attendant and under my protection. Miss Moreau, Blackthorn savoured the name like wine, is a common orphan with no family name, no noble blood and no breeding whatsoever, hardly suitable company for a king. Heat flooded Elena's cheeks, but she kept her chin high. She'd heard variations of this speech her entire life. Her bloodline is irrelevant, Adrian replied coolly, as is your opinion of my staff. Staff? Blackthorn laughed, harsh and grating. Is that what we're calling royal mistresses now? How progressive of you. The insult hit like a physical blow, but before Elena could react, Adrian moved. One moment he was beside her, the next he was inches from Blackthorn, radiating lethal intent. Apologise, Adrian said quietly. Now. For speaking the truth? Blackthorn's smile widened. Very well, let me be more direct. I challenge your right to rule, Adrian Volkov. You've grown weak, distracted by pretty trinkets when you should be focused on the kingdom's needs. And who exactly do you propose should rule in my place? Someone with the strength to make hard choices. Someone who won't be compromised by emotional entanglements. Blackthorn's gaze slithered over Elena again. Someone who understands that kings don't keep pets. The air in the throne room crackled with tension. Elena could feel Adrian's control fraying, could see the wolf stirring beneath his human mask. Around them, the assembled court held their collective breath. You want to challenge me? Adrian's voice was soft, dangerous. Fine, but we do this properly. Ancient law, trial by combat, witnessed by the full court. He paused, letting the words sink in. And when I win, you and your family are banished from my lands forever." "Agreed." Blackthorn's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "And when I win, the girl dies first, slowly, while you watch." Elena's blood turned to ice, but Adrian's fury exploded like a supernova. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees, and she could swear she saw his shadow take on the shape of something with fangs and claws. "Try to touch her," Adrian said, his voice barely human, "and I'll tear out your throat with my bare hands." "Such passion," Blackthorn mused, "such weakness. You've already lost, boy. You just don't know it yet." Adrian took another step forward, and Elena realized with growing horror that this was exactly what Blackthorn wanted. He was goading Adrian into losing control, into making mistakes driven by fury instead of strategy. Without thinking, Elena stepped forward and placed her hand on Adrian's arm. The contact seemed to ground him, pulling him back from the edge of violence. "Adrian," she said quietly, "just for him. Don't let him win before the fight even starts." Adrian's breathing slowed. The supernatural chill in the air receded. When he looked at Blackthorn again, his expression was coldly controlled. "Tomorrow at dawn," Adrian announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the throne room. "The courtyard, shifted combat until one yields or dies." "Excellent," Blackthorn bowed mockingly. "I'll try to make it quick, for the girl's sake." He turned to leave, his men falling into formation around him. But at the doorway, he paused and looked back. "Oh, and your Majesty? You might want to say your goodbyes tonight. I understand it's traditional." Then he was gone, leaving behind the echo of threats and the scent of malice. Elena stood frozen as the court slowly dispersed, whispered conversations following in Blackthorn's wake. When they were finally alone, Adrian turned to her with eyes full of pain. "I should have protected you from this," he said roughly. "Should have hidden you away, kept you safe." "Stop!" Elena cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You didn't choose this. He did. And whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together." "Elena, if I lose—" "You won't. If I do—" She silenced him with a kiss, pouring every ounce of love and faith she possessed into the contact. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "You won't lose," she whispered against his lips, "because you're fighting for something he doesn't understand. You're fighting for love." Adrian's arms came around her, holding her close enough that she could feel his heartbeat against her chest, strong and steady and alive. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured into her hair. "Please. I can't bear the thought of spending what might be our last hours apart." Eleanor pulled back to look at him, this man who had given her everything, safety, purpose, love, and was prepared to die protecting her. The choice was easy. "Always," she promised, "for as long as you'll have me." "Forever, then." Adrian's smile was soft and heartbreaking and full of hope. "Starting right now." He lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing, and Eleanor let herself be carried away from the throne room and its lingering shadows toward whatever tomorrow might bring. Together. Dawn came too soon, and not soon enough. Eleanor woke in Adrian's arms, surrounded by warmth and the steady rhythm of his breathing. For a moment she let herself pretend this was just another morning, that they had forever stretching ahead of them instead of a fight to the death waiting in the courtyard. "You're awake," Adrian murmured against her hair, his voice rough with sleep. "So are you." She tilted her head to look at him, memorizing every detail of his face in the pale morning light. "How long?" "An hour until dawn." His arms tightened around her. "Elena, if something happens today—" "Nothing will happen." She pressed her fingers to his lips. "You're going to win, and then we're going to have a very long, very boring life together." Adrian caught her hand and kissed her palm. "Promise me something." "Anything." "If the worst happens, if Blackthorn somehow—" "Promise me you'll run. Don't try to fight him. Don't try to be brave. Just run." Elena stared at him, seeing the fear he was trying so hard to hide. "Adrian, Promise me." "I promise," she lied, knowing she would do no such thing. If Adrian fell, she wouldn't survive long enough to run anyway. The courtyard was packed with spectators despite the early hour. Word of the challenge had spread through the palace and beyond, drawing nobles and servants alike to witness what could be the end of an era. Elena stood on the raised platform reserved for the royal family, flanked by guards Adrian had insisted upon, watching as preparations were made below. A circle had been marked in the sand, 30 feet across. Ancient symbols were carved into stones placed at cardinal points: wolf, moon, crown, death. Elena's stomach churned as she realized this wasn't just a fight. It was a ritual, sanctified by laws older than memory. "The combat will be to the death," the court herald announced, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "Shifted form only, no weapons save tooth and claw. The victor claims not only the throne, but the life of the vanquished." A murmur ran through the crowd. Elena's hands clenched into fists, nails digging crescents into her palms. Adrian entered the circle first, moving with predatory grace. He'd stripped down to simple leather pants, his chest bare and marked with the ritual symbols that declared him Alpha King. Even from a distance, Eleanor could see the power coiled in every line of his body. Blackthorn followed, older but no less deadly. His eyes found Eleanor across the courtyard, and his smile was all teeth. "Begin," the herald called. Both men shifted simultaneously. Eleanor had never seen Adrian's wolf form, had only glimpsed hints of the beast that lived beneath his skin. The transformation stole her breath. One moment he was human, the next a massive black wolf with golden eyes that seemed to glow with inner fire. He was beautiful and terrible, apex predator made flesh. Blackthorn's wolf was silver-grey, smaller but scarred with the marks of countless battles. When he moved, it was with the calculated precision of an experienced killer. They circled each other warily, testing, measuring. The crowd fell silent except for the whisper of breathing and the soft pad of paws on sand. Blackthorn struck first. He moved like lightning, faster than Elena's eyes could follow. Adrian barely twisted aside in time, silver fangs missing his throat by inches. They rolled apart, snarling, and Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. The fight that followed was brutal and beautiful in equal measure. Adrian was stronger, but Blackthorn was cunning. Where Adrian relied on power, Blackthorn used strategy, wearing him down with quick strikes and strategic retreats. Blood soon stained the sand. Elena found herself leaning forward, her hands gripping the stone railing hard enough to hurt. Every time Blackthorn's teeth found their mark, she felt the pain like it was her own. Every time Adrian faltered, her heart stopped beating. This was what it meant to love someone completely, to live and die with every breath they took. 20 minutes in, Adrian gained the upper hand. A perfectly timed lunge sent Blackthorn tumbling, and Adrian's jaws closed around his opponent's throat. For a moment, Elena thought it was over. Then Blackthorn did something unexpected. Instead of struggling, he went limp, playing dead just long enough for Adrian's grip to loosen. The moment it did, he twisted and raked his claws across Adrian's ribs, opening deep gashes that bled freely. Adrian roared, a sound that was more wolf than human, and his golden eyes found Elena's across the courtyard. In them she saw something that made her blood turn to ice. He was losing. Not the fight, not yet, but his strength. Blackthorn's strategy was working, bleeding him slowly, wearing down his endurance. Adrian was fighting with his heart as much as his body, and it was making him vulnerable. Elena closed her eyes and reached for the bond between them, that golden thread she'd felt from the very beginning. She poured every ounce of love, every grain of faith, every spark of strength she possessed down that connection. "I'm here," she whispered in her mind. "I believe in you. Come back to me." Adrian's wolf form went still for just an instant. Then his head turned toward her, and even from that distance she could see the moment he felt her love flowing into him like sunlight. When he turned back to Blackthorn, everything had changed. Adrian moved like a force of nature unleashed. Gone was the careful strategy, the defensive posturing. In its place was pure, focused fury, not the wild rage Blackthorn had been counting on, but something far more dangerous, the wrath of a mate protecting what he loved. Blackthorn tried to retreat, but Adrian was everywhere at once. Teeth and claws found their mark with surgical precision, and within minutes the older wolf was on his back, Adrian's jaws around his throat. This time there would be no tricks. "Yield!" Adrian's voice was barely recognizable, more growl than speech. Blackthorn's eyes bulged with fury and fear. For a moment Elena thought he might refuse, might force Adrian to kill him. Then his wolf form shuddered and went limp. "I yield!" he gasped. The courtyard erupted. Cheers and applause echoed off the walls as Adrian stepped back, his massive form trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. He lifted his muzzle toward Elena, and she saw the golden eyes that had captured her heart from the very first moment. "Come to me," those eyes seemed to say. Elena didn't remember moving. One moment she was on the platform, the next she was running across the courtyard, propriety and protocol forgotten. She fell to her knees beside Adrian's wolf form, her hands finding the thick fur around his neck. "You did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You won." Adrian's form shimmered and shifted back to human. Elena found herself holding a naked, bleeding, exhausted man who was looking at her like she was everything good in the world. "For you," he said roughly, "all of it, for you." Elena kissed him then, in front of the entire court, tasting salt and copper and victory. When they broke apart, the crowd was still cheering, but all she could see was Adrian. "Are you hurt?" she asked, running her hands over his chest, checking the worst of his wounds. "Nothing that won't heal." He caught her hands, bringing them to his lips. "Elena, there's something I need to ask you. Here, now, in front of everyone." Elena's heart stopped. "Adrian!" He struggled to his knees, still holding her hands, still naked and bloody and magnificent. "Elena Moreau, will you be my queen? Will you stand beside me as my mate, my partner, my equal in all things?" The question rang across the suddenly silent courtyard. Elena was dimly aware of hundreds of eyes upon them, of the significance of this moment. But all that mattered was the man kneeling before her, with hope and love blazing in his golden gaze. "Yes," she whispered, then louder for everyone to hear. "Yes!" The cheer that rose from the crowd could probably be heard 3 kingdoms over. The weeks that followed were a blur of preparations and healing. Adrian's wounds mended quickly, thanks to his enhanced healing, but the deeper changes took longer. Elena watched him grow into his role as not just king, but as half of a mated pair. Gone was the lonely ruler she'd first met. In his place was a man who smiled more readily, who listened to her counsel, who seemed to glow with contentment. She was changing too. The frightened girl who'd applied for a maid's position was becoming someone else, someone confident enough to speak up in council meetings, someone brave enough to challenge ancient protocols, someone worthy of standing beside a king. "The orphanage project is approved," Adrian announced one evening, sliding a signed document across his desk to where Eleanor sat reviewing budgets. "Construction begins next month." Eleanor's face lit up. "Really? All of it?" "Every detail, the main building, the schoolrooms, the gardens." Adrian's smile was soft with affection. "You were very persuasive in your presentation to the council." "You mean you threatened them if they didn't approve it?" "I prefer strongly encouraged." Adrian stood and moved around the desk, pulling Elena into his arms. "I'm proud of you. This will help hundreds of children." Elena leaned into his embrace, marvelling at how safe she felt here. "It feels good to have a purpose beyond just surviving." You've always had purpose, love. I just helped you see it. They stood there in comfortable silence, holding each other in the lamplight. Outside, the kingdom was settling into evening routines, families gathering for dinner, children being tucked into bed, couples sharing quiet moments like this one. Adrian? Elena pulled back to look at him. Do you ever regret it? Choosing me? Never. His answer was immediate and fierce. You're the best choice I've ever made, the only choice that mattered. Even though I'm not noble born, even though I don't know all the protocols and I still use the wrong fork at formal dinners. Adrian laughed, the sound rich and warm. Especially because of those things. You see the kingdom through different eyes, Elena. You remember what it's like to be hungry, to be afraid, to have nowhere to go. That makes you a better queen than any noble-born woman could ever be. Eleanor's throat tightened with emotion. I love you. And I love you, more than life, more than breath, more than the crown itself. Adrian cupped her face in his hands. You saved me, Elena, in every way a person can be saved. We saved each other, she corrected softly. Yes, Adrian agreed, bending to kiss her forehead. We did. Later that night, as they lay tangled together in the massive royal bed, Eleanor reflected on the impossible journey that had brought her here. From homeless orphan to beloved queen, from running from love to running toward it, from surviving to truly living. What are you thinking about? Adrian murmured, tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Fairy tales, Elena admitted. I never believed in them before. And now? Now I know they're real. They just don't happen the way the stories say they do. Elena turned in his arms to face him. They're messier, scarier, more complicated. But worth it? Adrian's golden eyes searched her face in the moonlight. Elena smiled, her heart full to overflowing with love for this man who'd seen worth in her when she couldn't see it herself. Definitely worth it. Outside their window, the kingdom slept peacefully under stars and the protective watch of their king and queen. And somewhere in the city, another orphan child was falling asleep, hungry and alone, not knowing that by morning there would be plans in motion to build them a home. Some fairy tales, Elena had learned, were just the beginning. 6 months later, Elena stood before the mirror in the royal chambers, hardly recognizing the woman looking back at her. The coronation gown was a masterpiece of silk and silver thread designed to catch the light with every movement. A crown waited on the dresser, not the massive jewel-encrusted piece worn by previous queens, but something simpler, more elegant. Adrian had insisted it be made to Elena's specifications. "You look like a queen," her lady's maid said softly, adjusting the flowing train one final time. Elena smiled at the reflection. "I feel like one too." It was true. The frightened girl who'd applied for a maid's position was gone, replaced by someone who could stand before the council and argue policy, who could comfort a crying child with equal skill as she could negotiate trade agreements. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been countless lessons in protocol, stumbles over etiquette, moments of doubt when the weight of responsibility felt crushing. But Adrian had been beside her through all of it, patient and encouraging, helping her find her voice without trying to change who she was at her core. "His Majesty is waiting," the maid announced. Elena took one last look in the mirror, then lifted her chin with quiet confidence. "Let's not keep him waiting." The coronation ceremony was everything Eleanor had dreamed of, and nothing like she'd expected. The cathedral was packed with nobles from across the kingdom and beyond, all dressed in their finest clothes, all there to witness history in the making. But when the massive doors opened and Eleanor began her walk down the aisle, she only had eyes for one person. Adrian stood at the altar in formal royal regalia, but his expression was soft with wonder as he watched her approach. The golden thread between them hummed with joy, love, and anticipation for the future they were about to officially claim. When she reached his side, he offered his arm with a smile that made her heart flutter just like it had that very first day. "Ready?" he murmured, just for her. With you, always, she whispered back. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of ancient words and sacred rituals. Eleanor knelt beside Adrian as the high priest spoke of duty and service, of love and partnership, of the sacred bond between a king and queen. When the crown was placed upon her head, she felt the weight of it, not just the physical presence, but the responsibility it represented. "Rise, your majesty," the high priest intoned. "Rise, Queen Elena, beloved of the people, mate to the king, mother to the kingdom." Elena stood with Adrian's hand steady in hers, and the cathedral erupted in cheers that seemed to shake the very foundations. Looking out at the sea of faces, noble and common alike, she saw acceptance, hope, and something that looked remarkably like love. They'd taken a chance on her, this kingdom. They'd accepted a common-born orphan as their queen because their king had seen something in her worth claiming. Now she would spend her life proving worthy of that trust. That night, after the feast and the dancing and the endless stream of well-wishers, Elena and Adrian finally found themselves alone in their chambers. The crown sat discarded on the dresser, replaced by the simple comfort of each other's arms. "Any regrets?" Adrian asked, his fingers trailing through her unbound hair. Elena pretended to consider it seriously. "Well, the crown is heavier than I expected, and Lord Pemberton stepped on my feet during the ceremonial dance. I'll have him banished immediately." "Don't you dare! His wife already apologized 6 times. Elena turned in his arms to face him. "No regrets, Adrian, not a single one." "Good." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Because I have something for you." "Another something? You've already given me a kingdom. This is different." Adrian reached into the bedside drawer and withdrew a small velvet box. "Something just for you. Not the Queen, just Elena." Elena's breath caught. Inside the box was a ring unlike anything she'd ever seen. Not the massive royal engagement ring that now graced her left hand, but something delicate and personal. A simple band of white gold set with a stone that seemed to capture light and hold it, glowing like captured starlight. "Adrian, it's beautiful, but you already—" "Look at the inscription," he said softly. Elena tilted the ring toward the lamplight and read the words etched in flowing script. "My Elena, always and forever." A K asterisk, the same initials that had been on the note with her first dress, what felt like a lifetime ago. "You've been planning this since the beginning," Elena realized, tears blurring her vision. "Since the moment you walked into that interview room," Adrian confirmed. "I knew you were mine, knew I wanted to spend forever with you. This ring, it's not about duty or politics or bloodlines. It's about a man who loves a woman so much it actually hurts sometimes." Elena slipped the ring onto her right hand, where it nestled perfectly beside her royal signet. "I love you too, more than words can say." "Show me," Adrian whispered against her lips. And she did. The months that followed were the happiest of Elena's life. The orphanage project became reality, a beautiful complex on the outskirts of the capital where children without families could find safety, education, and hope. Elena visited weekly, reading stories and teaching lessons, watching young faces light up with the same wonder she'd felt when her mother first taught her letters. "You're a natural with them," Adrian observed one afternoon, watching as Eleanor helped a small girl with her reading. "I know what it's like," Eleanor said simply, "to feel unwanted, disposable. If I can help even one child feel valued, feel like they matter. They all matter, because you matter." Adrian pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You've changed this kingdom, Elena, made it better, kinder. We've changed it, together." It was true. Adrian had used his influence to support Elena's social programs, had backed every initiative she proposed to help the common people. Together, they'd created something new, a reign built on compassion as much as strength, on love as much as law. The kingdom flourished under their joint rule. Trade increased, conflicts decreased, and for the first time in generations, there was real hope for peace. But it was the quiet moments Elena treasured most. Morning conversations over breakfast, Adrian reading to her while she embroidered, evenings spent planning not just policy, but dreams. They talked about everything: the future they were building, the children they hoped to have someday, the legacy they wanted to leave behind. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Elena asked one evening as they walked through the palace gardens. "When I applied to be a maid?" Adrian's laugh was rich with affection. "Only every day. You were so determined to be professional, so convinced you didn't belong." "I didn't belong, not then." "You belonged from the moment you were born," Adrian said firmly. "You just needed to find your way home." Eleanor stopped walking and turned to face him, this man who'd seen worth in her when she couldn't see it herself. "And have I found my way home? Look around." Adrian gestured to the gardens, the palace beyond, the kingdom that stretched to the horizon. "What do you think?" Elena did look at the roses Adrian had planted for her, at the windows glowing warm with lamplight, at the guards who bowed respectfully as they passed. But mostly she looked at Adrian, at the love and pride shining in his golden eyes. "I think," she said slowly, "that home isn't a place, it's a person, and I found mine the day I walked into that interview room. Even though I terrified you. Especially because you terrified me. The best things in life are a little scary." Eleanor reached for his hands, twining their fingers together. "Thank you, Adrian, for seeing me, for choosing me, for giving me a life I never dreamed possible." "Thank you," Adrian replied, his voice rough with emotion, "for staying, for fighting for us, for becoming the queen I always knew you could be." They stood there in the moonlit garden, surrounded by the scent of roses and the soft sounds of a kingdom at peace, holding each other like they would never let go. Because they wouldn't. This love they'd found, unexpected, impossible, absolutely perfect, would last forever. And somewhere in the city, in the orphanage Eleanor had built, a young girl was falling asleep in a warm bed with a full belly and a book of fairy tales clutched in her hands. Tomorrow, Queen Elena would visit and read to the children, and the girl would listen with wide eyes as the Queen told stories of love conquering fear, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, of dreams coming true in the most unexpected ways. Some fairy tales, the Queen would say with a knowing smile, were still being written, and this one would have the happiest ending of all. Where are you listening from? Share your thoughts on Elena and Adrian's journey in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of love conquering all odds, please subscribe for more paranormal romance tales that will sweep you off your feet. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the bravest leap of faith.